40,000 years ago, deep inside a cave in southern France, a human being crawled into the darkness, alone, with nothing but a torch, and on the walls of that cave, they painted something. Not animals, not hunting scenes, something stranger, half human, half animal, a figure with human legs and a bison's head, standing upright, watching. The painting still exists today. It's called the Sorcerer, and nobody fully understands what it means. But everyone agrees on one thing. Whoever painted it believed in something beyond the ordinary world, something powerful, something dangerous, something that required going deep into the earth to access. So did ancient humans believe in black magic? The honest answer is complicated. Because to understand what they believed, you first have to understand how they saw the world. And that world was completely different from ours. There were no scientists, no explanations for why things happened. Someone got sick suddenly. Someone's crops failed. A child was born and immediately died. Lightning struck a tree and killed 3 people. To us, these have explanations. Bacteria, drought, genetics, electricity. To ancient humans, these were not random. They were caused. Something invisible made them happen. Something with intention. Something that could be influenced, or appeased, or controlled. That belief, that the invisible world could affect the visible world, is the foundation of everything. In nearly every ancient culture that archaeologists have studied, there was someone whose job it was to communicate with that invisible world. Different cultures called them different things. Shaman, spirit caller, witch doctor, medicine man. But the role was almost identical everywhere. This person stood between the ordinary world and the world beyond it. They could go there and come back with knowledge, or power, or healing, or harm. The earliest evidence of shamanic practice goes back at least 30,000 years, possibly much further. Burial sites from this period show specific individuals buried differently from everyone else. More objects around them, animal bones arranged deliberately, unusual artifacts that served no practical purpose. These weren't warriors or leaders. They were something else. Something the group treated with a specific kind of reverence and a specific kind of fear. Because here's the thing about the shaman. They didn't just heal, they also harmed. The same power that could be used to cure sickness could be turned to cause it. The same knowledge that could protect could destroy. Ancient communities understood this completely. The person who could call rain could also call drought. The person who could cure a fever could also create one. Power wasn't good or evil, it was power, and what you did with it determined everything. Archaeological evidence from ancient sites shows deliberate acts that look remarkably like what we would call curses. Figurines pierced with sharp objects, found buried at thresholds of dwellings, deliberately damaged objects placed near the remains of enemies, carefully arranged bones in patterns that served no practical purpose. Were these black magic? They were certainly intentional. They were certainly meant to affect someone, and whoever placed them believed completely that they would work. One of the most fascinating discoveries came from a site in South Africa. Inside a cave called Border Cave, researchers found objects dating back over 40,000 years. Among them, a thin stick wrapped carefully in plant fiber, stained with a specific substance. Researchers identified it as a highly toxic plant compound, not enough to kill quickly, enough to cause prolonged suffering. This wasn't medicine. This wasn't food preparation. This was something deliberate, something intentionally harmful, made by someone who understood exactly what it would do. Ancient humans also believed deeply in the power of the dead, not death as an ending, but death as a transition to a different kind of power. Ancestors didn't simply disappear, they moved into the invisible world. And from there, they could watch, they could influence, they could protect, or punish. Burial practices from this period show extraordinary care. Bodies arranged deliberately, specific objects placed with specific people, red ochre painted onto bones. These weren't just rituals of grief, they were negotiations, attempts to ensure that the person crossing into the invisible world would be an ally there, not an enemy, because the dead could cause harm too. Ancient communities across different continents, with no contact with each other, independently developed similar practices, placing heavy stones over graves, breaking objects before burying them, specific rituals to prevent the dead from returning. This wasn't universal grief. This was specific fear. Fear that some of the dead would come back angry. There were also specific places that ancient humans believed were dangerous, not because of physical threats, but because of what existed there beyond ordinary perception. certain caves, certain crossroads, certain trees, places where the boundary between the ordinary world and the invisible world was thin, where things that lived in that invisible world could pass through. Ancient humans didn't walk through these places carelessly. They approached them with specific behaviors, offerings left at the entrance, specific sounds made to announce their presence, specific plants carried for protection. These weren't superstitions. To ancient humans, these were practical precautions, as practical as checking for predators before stepping into tall grass. The ancient shaman's toolkit, wherever in the world archaeologists have found it, included specific plants, some healing, some hallucinogenic, some deeply toxic. The knowledge of which plant did what was not written anywhere. It lived in one person, passed to another in strict secrecy, because this knowledge was power, and power in ancient communities was carefully guarded. The shaman who knew which root could stop a heart was one of the most powerful people in any ancient group, and one of the most feared. So did ancient humans believe in black magic. They believed in a world where invisible forces caused real events, where certain people could access those forces, where the dead retained power, where specific places were genuinely dangerous beyond anything physical, where knowledge, secret, carefully guarded knowledge, could be used to harm as easily as to heal. Was that black magic? In their world, it was simply how things worked. The invisible world was as real to them as the ground beneath their feet, as real as the fire they built each night, as real as the eyes watching them from the darkness beyond the firelight. They didn't call it magic. They called it truth. 40,000 years later, that painting in the cave in France still watches, half human, half animal, standing in the dark, waiting for someone brave enough to bring a torch. And look,